वेटिंग रूम 4 है, एडमिट हॉल। Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, students.
Good morning, sir.
I shall be starting this lecture on haploids and dihaploids production. Okay, in simple sense, it's also called antherculture, androgenesis, gynogenesis, and all that. So today we shall discuss some aspects of this, why this technology, what are its uses, what for it is, and all that, and how it is being done. So starting with the lecture, first thing I would like to know from all of you that what do you understand by haploids, dihaploids? First, what are haploids and what are dihaploids? Anyone? Yes, please. Haploids and dihaploids. So,
haploid is a single set of unpaired chromosomes.
And we denote it by
N.
Okay. Small n. That's right. We can put it large n, not small n. Okay. Capital N. Right.
Yes. Yes.
So that is true. It's one set of chromosomes. I agree with that. But I just want to know why I brought this particular concept here is that why we use term n, what we call it as, and you can say n to n, okay, right? You know the wheat, we call it as haploid, we call it as diploid, right? So question is in case of wheat is a hexaploid. Hexaploid, but we still call it as 2n. Why? Are you aware of this thing?
The wheat endospore is hexaploid.
No, bache. Wheat is a hexaploid. The wheat which we grow in the field is a hexaploid, right? It's not endosperm, it's wheat, right? So there is one more term which is involved in this whole process. This is just clearing you some basic concept, which we call it as X. One term is X, one is N. What is the difference between the two? You will understand why wheat is called hexaploid, which is written as 2N. What is X and what is N? Anyone know about this? Yes, it's right that 2n is equal to 6x is equal to 42. Then what is x? What is x? X, now just I will tell you one thing. Generally in nature, the plants are diploid. In nature, most of the plants are diploid. Diploid, we call them 2n. And their one set of chromosome, we call them 1n. Right? N or 1n. Okay? Now the question is, this 2n. But in tetraploid also we call 2n and n, tetraploid also. But they are having 4 set of chromosomes. But these 4 set do not belong to one species only. Okay, it has come from 2 different parent groups which are forming this tetraploid. For the particular species, this n is the x is the number. For the particular species, x is the number which contain all the genes required for making that species. Is a minimum number of chromosomes that carry all the genes that makes that species. Okay, so that is x. Now if a tissue is having 2 times of this number, we call it as 2n, and we call it as a 2x and 1x also. It becomes same. But if the tissue is having 4 times, plant is having 4 times number of the x, then we call it as 4x, as some of you has rightly answered, is equal to 2n, and haploid we call it as 1n. Haploid we call it as 1n. Although this is 2x, haploid is equal to 2x. So that is what happens in case of wheat. Wheat hexaploid is written as AA, B, B, C, C. That means 2 set of chromosome from A group, 2 set from B group of wheat, and 2 set from C group of wheat. And when it forms gamete, it forms A, B, C, A, B, C. So 1n is equal to 3x. 1n is equal to 3x. Is that clear now, the concept of what is difference between x, n and 2n? Hello? Hello, students?
Yes, sir.
Any doubt about it? Some of you already know it, I know. But any doubt to the others? What is x, n and 2n?
No, sir.
Is that clear? Okay. So right. So the first thing is over. This was the basic concept which I perceive that you should know before we start debating on this particular or discussing this topic of haploid production and all that. Okay, so haploids, the term haploid is referred to the plant which possesses gametophytic number. This 1n is also called gametophytic number. That every organism has 2 generation. One we call it as sporophytic generation, and other we call it as gametophytic generation. So n is referred to as a gametophytic generation, which is produced by the virtue of meiosis. In this sporophytic generation, we get gametophytic generation, and with the fusion of sperms, we again get back sporophytic generations. So these are important for the production of isogenic lines. What does isogenic lines means? Now let me explain this isogenic lines, because this is these are some of the fundamental crux of the thing why this has happened. So isogenic lines kya hai? I give you the example of wheat. That is hexaploid A, B, B, and C, C. Okay. Now, if this is a wheat, I don't talk of a variety which is existing now at the moment. I take, let us not talk this also. This will also make you little bit confusing, let me take the example of diploid itself. So let's take the example of any plant which is having 2n, that is, let's say AA. Okay, this is a 2n chromosome. So when we get the gametes, it carry n, right? Now the thing is all the gametes genetically same? Yes. Is all the gametes genetically same? Yugam? Yugam? Shreya? Shreya? Diksha? Diksha? Muskan? Is someone there?
Yes, sir. All the gametes are genetically same.
My question is, I just gave you this situation that the gametes produce AA from the double A. So all these gametes are genetically same, or there could be some differences?
So they're genetically same.
Okay. They are basically most of the time not genetically same. If they are genetically same, then when they combine, they will produce the offsprings exactly like a parent. They will produce the offsprings which is exactly like parents. Okay, but you think in sexual reproduction, do you get the offspring which are exactly like parent, except varieties? They are not. There is always different. Now let us we talk of siblings. In case of human being, are the siblings exactly same?
No, sir.
Then why they are different? You can say if the gametes are same from mother and father, in whatsoever manner they may fuse, the siblings has to be genetically same, isn't it? They should be, but they are not same. Do you know why they are not same? Why they are not same? Because they are not same because this AA, there is a not exactly same type of genes present on both the chromosome. Okay, आपने मेंडल का तो पढ़ा होगा ना, वो मोनोहाइब्रिड डाइहाइब्रिड क्रॉस, that tall plant, dwarf plant, and then round seed, wrinkle seed, yellow testa and green testa. You might have studied all those. So if we consider that kind of condition, the genes present on the two chromosomes are not exactly same. So what happens during meiosis? Meiosis, have you heard of crossing over? Have you heard of crossing over?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So what happens during crossing over? So what happens during crossing over? Say this is one homologous pair of chromosome. Let me make it in a different color. So this is a homologous pair of chromosome. Okay. So what happens when this crossing over takes place? Chromatid they can exchange with each other, isn't it? Hello.
Yes, sir.
So there is a possibility that the chromatids they can exchange. So after crossing over, you may get the situation like this, isn't it? Now these chromosomes are also already different, right? And then crossing over can shuffle the genes also. So we don't know, we can produce n type of gametes genetically. N type means many type. Therefore, when these gametes they combine with each other, the organism, the siblings, they are different, right? Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Now the question is, in case of varieties, what happens? Where I told you the offsprings are going to be same. In case of varieties, the condition, the genes on homologous pair of chromosome, they are exactly same. They may combine, they are going to combine in meiosis, recombine. Recombination is going to take place. But the way they may recombine, their genetic constitution on the chromosome doesn't change. And they ultimately get same type of gametes. And when they fuse, they get the variety which is exactly like offsprings, which is exactly like that of parent, right? That's the difference in variety. Now, this condition, what we are discussing here, is a highly heterozygous condition. Okay. And this is a homozygous condition we are discussing here, right? So generally, the organisms are heterozygous, right? So when we produce haploids, now suppose we produce the haploids, suppose from this we produce the haploid. So we get a plant which are exactly having one chromosome. That is, say this is the chromosome is having. Okay, let's talk of one only, let's not talk of other. So one chromosome, this is a haploid. Now if we make this haploid diploid by some process, we just make double of it. Now you tell me, is the homozygous position, now the gametes are going to be same or different genetically? Yes, students?
The same.
They are going to be same. This is the condition, we call it as dihaploids. Or we call them pure homozygous. Or we call them pure breeding lines. Earlier, how people used to produce, there used to be different ways that they used to have this heterozygous condition, and they will start back crossing it with one of the parent. With the repeated back crossing, is stage will come when the variety, the material will become nearly homozygous. That's called these are also called near isogenic lines. So we can get the near isogenic line that way. Earlier, how people used to produce, but now people produce it with the help of just culturing haploid tissue, that is gametes. And once we get the gametes growing in the haploid tissue, we diploidize them to get the diploid tissue, from where we regenerate the plant and we get the homozygous diploid material, or dihaploids, we call them. So that is what the basic concept of anther culture is. Okay, why we carry out the anther culture? Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Sir.
these are important for the production of isogenic lines. Now I have explained to you why they are important, how they are producing. We also call them as a homozygous line, pure breeding line, and the terms which I have given you in the previous discussion slide. These are also important for the detection of recessive mutants. If in a heterozygous condition, there are certain mutations which are recessive, so we are not able to these mutations are not reflected in the phenotype. If they are not reflected in the phenotype, we do not are able to identify those mutations. Sometimes these mutations may be very, 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 very important. Okay, so if we grow the haploid of that, so in case of haploid, this recessive characters will be expressed. When the recessive characters are expressed, we can identify the recessive mutants, important recessive mutants. Artificial production of haploid was attempted first. How it was first time attempted? So two species they used to cross. That species A they will cross with species B artificially, and zygote is produced, and in the zygote the chromosome of one of the species are eliminated. Okay, and the embryo is produced from the zygote which has already eliminated the chromosome of one species. In that case, the embryo is going to be the haploid. This was the first attempt to produce the haploid, and this technique was very famously known as bulbosome technique. Bulbosome technique, I'll explain it to you. Maybe I don't know if it's on next slide or some later slide. I think it's there. I will explain it to you. So methods of production. What are the various methods of production of the haploids? We can do the embryo rescue of interspecific crosses. So when we carry out the interspecific crosses, in some of the crosses, some of the chromosomes they get eliminated. Some of the chromosomes get eliminated, and if the chromosome of one parent gets eliminated or half of the chromosome gets eliminated, we get the haploids. And the technique I explained to you was bulbosome technique one of, and we can also get the allopolyploid. That means the alloploids. That means the with different number of chromosomes. Exactly, not half. So other is anther culture. We can culture the pollens and anthers at haploid stage and get the haploids growing. Derive a mature plant from the single microspore. We can also get the mature plant from the single microspore. Microspores are haploid, and we can get the haploid plants. This is the second. And culturing of unfertilized ovule. We can also culture the unfertilized ovule and induce it to form the embryo. In that case, that embryo is going to be the haploid. The plant is going to be the haploid. And there are some tricks has been played to get the haploids. So this is the what we call it as a bulbosome technique. In this case, it was attempted first time in case of Hordeum vulgare. Hordeum vulgare is a what we call it as a jaw. So Hordeum vulgare was crossed with Hordeum bulbosum. These are two species, and both the species have 14 number of 2n chromosome. They are diploid. 2n is equal to 2x is equal to 14. So once they produce the gamete, they will produce the gamete with the n or x, where n and x are same, and they get the gamete is equal to 7. Gametophytic number is equal to 7. Once these gametes they fuse and they get the diploid, that is with 14 number, and out of 14 number, 7 chromosome of bulbosum they get eliminated. These chromosomes get eliminated because ultimately they are not these chromosomes. Maybe this was used as a female parent, this was used as a bulbosum was used as a male parent, and female cytoplasm did not support the chromosome of bulbosum, and these chromosomes were eliminated, and ultimately what they get, the haploid plant with only 7 chromosomes of Hordeum vulgare. So this technique was popularly known as bulbosome technique and has been used for many other some of the other plants, not many, some of the other plants also. This was considered as an efficient method than microspore culture in creating the haploid plants of barley. So earlier it was considered as a very efficient method, but with the improvement of the technique, microspore culture is much more efficient than this bulbosome technique. It has been now proved. So this is a diagrammatic representation of anther culture, how we carry out the anther culture, we just take the flower bud. I have shown here the open flower. We don't take anther from the open flower, we take it from the closed bud. When the anther is at right stage of anther plays a very important role in case of anther culture. And then we culture these anthers onto the medium, and after some time these anthers may straightway give us some embryo-like structures which can get us plants. This is one route of getting, and if this is happening from the microspore after from the tissue after meiosis, then the plant is going to be the haploid, or this haploid tissue may give us callus, and this callus we can differentiate plant to get the haploid plantlets. That's how the different ways of anther culture has been to get the haploid plants. So what are the different factors affecting microspore culture? So first and foremost factor, I have already told you this thing and many times, that genotype of the species play a very important role. Genotype plays a very important role in all tissue culture responses. Including androgenesis. Okay, anther culture. So so as with all tissue culture technique, genotype, so it response will vary from genotype. Some genotype can get us haploid embryo, some can get us callus, so response is different. Some get us the response very easily, whereas some cases it is very difficult. Even within the species, say let us talk of the Datura inoxia, where this technique was first time reported. So in one strain it is possible that the androgenesis is very easy, and on other strain it can be very difficult also. So there's a very different response with little variation in the genetic makeup of the plant. And the growth of the mother plant also play a very important role in case of androgenesis. So usually require optimum growing conditions. Plant with optimum growing condition, we get the response very easily. If the plant is already under stress, then the response is relatively difficult. Relatively, it is not that easy, and we can get the response with the much difficulty. Plant do not, the tissue do not respond easily. The most important is correct stage of the pollen anther development. As anther contained pollinated, so may call it pollen development or anther development. That correct stage is very important. Yes, I will explain it to you in the next slide, why, which stage and why it is. Then what happens generally when the tissue has undergone meiosis? Following meiosis, immediately after we get a stage, we call it as a tetrad stage, where 4 cells produced from meiosis, they are lying as a group. So this tetrad stage is the first stage after meiosis, and these cells are haploid. And this is the stage which has been observed as most conducive stage for the development of embryos or haploid callus from the anther, because cells at this stage has not yet fully committed to form the male gamete. So they are not fully committed to form the male gamete. They can still be rooted with certain inductions to form haploid embryo or haploid callus. So this sort of things can just happen here, and we can get the haploid material from this. Then is pre-treatment, correct stage. After correct stage of anthers, we talk of pre-treatment of anthers. The pre-treatment of anthers, sometime before culture, if we treat the anthers to either cold or heat shock or certain chemicals that can change the path of developmental path of this microspore mother cells or microspores to from male gamete to the other pathway, that is helpful. And it has been observed that both cold and hot treatments and also treatment with certain chemicals has been used gainfully to reorient the path of this male tissue to different morphogenetic responses. Then comes media. Media additives such as agar or floating culture or carbohydrate and all other, they play a very, very important role with respect to the androgenesis. Let me see. Yes. So we will discuss it further. So stage of pollen development is very important. Generally, this is the tetrad stage. This is the stage at which if we take the pollen, we get the best response with respect to this androgenesis. This is the direct embryogenesis or catharucalus, whatsoever it is, and we get the haploid plant from their pollens. So it has been found that the tetrad stage is best, but nevertheless, it has been also recorded from the mature pollens, but not beyond mature pollens. If he has entered here, then you can't get it from there. Then it's not possible. Okay. So harvest the flower. How we generally assure the stage of pollen in the anther. What we do, we harvest the flower bud at different stages of different sizes. Generally, what the flower bud comes and it keeps growing in size, flower buds, and we take the flower bud of different sizes and we take out anther before opening of the flower. We take out anthers from each of the flower bud and just tease the anthers on the slide and see under the microscope. And we say, let us say at this stage of the flower bud, the anthers are there which has undergone the meiosis, and we observe this stage. Then we only take flower bud of this stage and we use this for the anther culture. That is how we generally assure this the size of the flower bud or the anther, right stage of anther for getting the that's what it is being established here. It is established that the best response is observed from the pollens at tetrad stage. Then sugar has been considered as one of the most important factor in getting the response, because when we talk of say anthers, let's we talk of these anthers. In the anthers, all tissue is not haploid. If we talk of anthers, say this is anther. So this filament is diploid. This all covering is diploid, and then if we cut the anther, you see it like that. So walls are diploid. This tissue is also diploid. This tissue. So this is all diploid. Haploid is only here. Here only haploids. So from this. So this is the section here I'm showing you. So haploid is a very small amount of tissue as compared to the diploid tissue, even in the anther. But how we get the response from the haploid is important. Generally, it has been seen that the sucrose concentration plays a very important role. Haploid tissue can grow on a higher sucrose concentration where diploid tissue cannot grow. This is the basic concept. haploid tissue can grow on higher sucrose concentration or a sucrose concentration where normally diploid tissue do not grow very nicely. So this differential response from the haploid to diploid tissue has been exploited to get the response from the haploid tissue. So what is being done? Anthers are cultured onto the medium containing higher sucrose concentration. So sucrose, what does it do? It increases the osmoticum of the medium. So what we do, we establish at which particular concentration osmoticum of the medium is little more than the particular pollen grains or anthers, total anthers. So it is more than the anther, it will be exactly same to the pollen grain or little less than the pollen grain. So in that case, the diploid tissue will not grow, only the haploid tissue will grow. So when this work was carried out, in most of the plant, it has been seen that the plants fall in two groups. Some plants, they have that particular thing at a sucrose concentration when it is used at 3 to 5%. Whereas in other, it may be required 4 to 6% or even sometime more. So we can say 4 to 8% sucrose. So if we culture under high sucrose concentration, it has been found that diploid tissue become black or does not divide, whereas the haploid tissue, it divide and we get the plants. So that is the sucrose concentration. We have a device to find out this osmotic potential of the anther sac. And this device is called osmometer, by osmometer. By osmometer. So this is one thing. And other thing is mostly N6, other thing is media composition. Mostly diluter media such as Niche and Niche 1969 media. This media has been used for anther culture in most of the cases, in more than 80% of the cases, this media, although all other media has been used. So better response, for this, we get a better response on this media from the haploid tissue as compared to the diploid tissue. Although the different crops, the different media has been used. The other important nutrient which play a role is a nitrogen type that is either reduced or oxidized nitrogen, that is in the form of NH4 or NO3. So this is also important. Then plant growth regulators of course play a very important role, like the normal tissue. They induce the division. They are the molecules that alter the path of morphogenetic path. Plant growth regulators are known to alter the morphogenetic pathway. So that work they will do here also, as in case of the diploid tissue also. We can alter the pathway from gametophytic pathway to the normal vegetative pathway, that is the formation of embryo or callus or something like that. This is also important. Then activated charcoal is another important thing with respect to the use of activated charcoal can help us. So there are other tricks also, but I restrict myself here only, and then come how to establish the ploidy level of the haploid and how can we achieve the chromosome doubling. The ploidy level of the haploid, suppose we get the haploid plant. So how we establish the ploidy level that the plant is haploid? So first thing is we count the plasmid in the guard cells of the stomata. So stomata guard cell, we count the number of plastids, and it has been found that in case of diploid, the number of plastids are significantly higher than the haploids. Or you can say in case of haploids, the number of plastids are significantly less than the diploid. Not exactly half, but significantly less. When we can say that the number is lower in this case. So counting the number. Then chromosome number and karyotype is of course a very important factor if we are able to count the number of chromosomes, that establishes the haploid nature unambiguously. This is a technique that can be used very, very effectively and has been used. And this is the I've shown you the karyotype. So we can compare the karyotype with that of diploid, and in the case of haploids, one from the each will be missing. Say this is missing from here, this is missing from here, this is missing from here, like that. It is already a karyotype of the haploid. Just I'm saying from the pair one is missing, so you get the number of chromosome half along with the only one set, and the karyotype you will get the complete. So other is number of nucleoli. We know that the nucleolus is a darkly stained portion in the nucleus of the cell. In the nucleus of the cell, this is a complete nucleus. In the nucleus, darkly stained portion. Students, hello, hello, are you people there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is a nucleolus? It is called darkly stained region within the nucleus, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
What it is doing. See, nucleolus is nothing but a region of the chromosome which are producing rRNA, and the proteins there get assembled from the cytoplasm to assemble the ribosomes. So these are also called ribosome assembling machines, nucleolus. Okay, so that's why they look that densely stained due to the higher amount of rRNA and proteins there. So in case of one set of chromosome, there is always one nucleolus. So diploid may you will have two. So haploid you will have only one. If we are able to count the number of nucleolus, we are able to establish the haploid nature of the cell. So this is another very important factor. Flow cytometry is another factor which is heavily used today when the people do not like to invest the hard work to count the number of chromosomes. They can just put it on the flow cytometer and straightway analyze the amount of DNA per cell and say it is haploid or diploid. Okay, so then chromosome doubling from the haploid, how we get the diploid? We can get the diploid by just doubling the number of chromosomes in the cell. This can be done by two ways. One is it can happen automatically by the process of endomitosis. So endomitosis can take place to get you the chromosome number which is double than the haploid, and which is the doubled haploid. We call them as, that's why we call them as dihaploids, and we get the again diploid, which are homozygous or pure homozygous lines. Or we can treat the callus or plant with the help of the colchicine, which is known to induce the endomitosis. It breaks the spindle and chromosome move to one cell and it becomes diploid. So this sort of things are being done to get the diploid tissue. Now coming to the applications of the haploid. Students, this application, I think, how much time is left? Hello, how much time is left? Hello? Hello, students?
10 minutes.
Yes.
10 minutes are there. Okay,
Yes,
so I'll take it. So development of the isogenic lines I have explained to you. I don't need to explain again and again that it is helpful in getting haploids. We don't want haploids, are of no use, but haploids are used to develop the isogenic lines. This is the first thing. Generally the pure isogenic line in case of annuals, breeder used to take around 10 to 15 years by back crossing. Now the breeder is able to produce pure isogenic lines in just within the span of 6 months of time, and it shorts the time, saves the time of the breeders. Then development of asexual lines. We can also get the asexual lines by triploid or pentaploid or something like that. Then it is used for the hybrid seed production. These isogenic lines are a prime requirement for the F1 hybrid seed production. Once for the hybrid seed production, you require 10 to 15 years for the haploids. But here you can produce it within 6 months, and you can go for the production of the haploid F1 hybrid seeds for the crops, which give you multifold higher yield of the crops. Then induction of genetic variability, because one set of chromosome we can easily result in the mutations with certain mutations, and we can reduce the variability. This is another application. Generation of exclusive male, we can get the exclusive males also by just diplodizing the two gametes with Y chromosome. We can get the exclusive males. Then cytogenetic research can also be carried out. That is, we can study the chromosomal changes and variation and how the chromosomes they behave. That all cytogenic. Hybrid sorting, we can sort out the hybrids, whether it's a hybrid or homozygous or it's a heterozygous condition, and all that can be done. Then we can result in producing stress resistance biotic and stress resistant plant, or we can just say for molecular breeding we can use that, as it help in the production of the isogenic line in a very short way. It help in the release of variety very fast. And then diploids and haploids, dihaploids and genome mapping can be used for that purpose. So these are all and there's some chat. What is happening? So what I can do, okay, so I close the meeting here, and we will meet now on Saturday.